Sadly, it's not just in Philadelphia. It's around the country and big, particularly Democrat-led cities. Surveillance video now showing thieves breaking in and ransacking the wine locker at a popular Italian restaurant in Seattle. It's the restaurant's 18th break-in since the start of the pandemic. And the rise of soft on crime laws and policies have made it worse. Jason Rantz provided us that video because he's been covering all this. He has a Seattle radio talk show that's very popular with people calling in. So, Jason, first of all, first person reporting, what are we looking at here?
We're looking at the 18th break-in at a restaurant that's on the brink. They have been dealing with this since, he says, the owner, since the pandemic. And he tells me in 29 years, he suffered about 5 break-ins. In the last 2.5 years, 18. And of course, it's not due to the pandemic. The pandemic was covered because at the exact same time that COVID started was when we started to see these light on crime policies that said we're not going to punish criminals. We're not actually going to put them in jail. We're going to give them endless chances in some cases, not even put them in front of a judge, instead putting them in front of a panel of restorative justice activists. And unfortunately, these people know that they can get away with these crimes. In addition, we've seen not just here, but across the state, an increase in these smash and grab robberies because they know if they can get in and get out very, very quickly. Democrats banned officers from vehicle pursuits. So as long as you get into a car and it's usually stolen and you just drive off, you don't even have to speed away. You can just drive off. They cannot follow you.
Look, I want to go back to Philadelphia for a second because, you know, when you hear a former police officer from Philly who now is providing security for businesses call the DA Uncle Larry Krasner because he's going to comfort you more than he is going to make sure that you're prosecuted as a criminal and potentially violent criminal, what's your response?
Yeah, he's comforting the wrong folks. You know, we often hear from people like Larry Krasner and other DAs that they're all about reforming the criminal justice system because marginalized communities are being victims of racism that is inherent to these institutions. But here's a marginalized community, the victims. Victims of crime. You are choosing not to pay any attention to them. And I defy anyone just to go back and listen to any interview by whether it's Larry Krasner or George Gascon or anyone else. How often do they talk about the victims? How often do they talk about the family that lost a loved one to gun violence or the small business owner who's constantly getting broken into? How often do they talk about them versus the criminal that they keep saying, oh, we're going to be able to reform them, but they're not being reformed. Unfortunately, they're just going out there and they're becoming prolific criminals and there's no end in sight.
Yeah. When you say the words endless chances for the violent criminals, I mean, that's just frightening. It's actually terrifying. And in North Carolina, I want to show everybody some surveillance video of an 83-year-old Home Depot employee and grandfather he is, trying to stop a thief. This was back in October. The video is going everywhere now. It took a bit for people to see this. Gary Razor died from his injuries, and police are still looking for a suspect. Oh, my goodness. Greg Gutfeld raised this question about what can be done for the victims.
Like a metaphorical snapshot of the last 2 years. No fear of repercussion, no cash bail, reduced sentences. Where are the reparations? It doesn't even matter the color of the skin for the criminal. Where are the reparations for the criminal, for the victims that were killed, attacked, raped by people that were let out based on the assumption that all of these rules were racist or oppressive based on 400 years of persecution? That's an interesting lawsuit.
What's your reaction to that?
Well, I think more of us need to start standing up for the victims. We used to have really vocal victim advocacy groups, and yet we don't have that anymore. I think Greg is spot on in pushing back and saying, well, what about the people who are being harmed by the policies that you guys on the Democrat side in this case are pursuing and pushing and installing?
Yeah, write them a check.
We just literally, what are we supposed to do for all these people who are hurting? Now, obviously, reparations is not going to happen, and there's not much money you can put for an individual's life. Nope. But the idea that we have to start saying, we screwed up and we're going to make it right. We're just not having those conversations in any meaningful way outside of, like, Fox News and this particular show. We talk about it all the time. But nationally, Democrats don't want to have that conversation.
No, and what you're saying is so spot on. I mean, for them to stand up and admit that their policies are causing so much havoc and hurt, is priceless, and you can't put a price on that. All right, a teacher in California is going viral after claiming she does not intend to teach grammar or writing skills in an attempt to defeat white supremacy. Let's watch.
Public education is an institution that upholds lots of problematic systems in our society, like white supremacy and misogyny and colonization, etc. In my role as an educator, I try to undermine that BS in my classroom as much as I possibly can. Let's look at how we write essays. Start with an introduction that includes a thesis. Always cite your sources. Use transition words like however and therefore. These are all made-up rules. They're arbitrary. They were created by Westerners in power.
So does she speak a different language when she's not on camera?
I love this. So I watched the whole, I think it's like 52 seconds. It's 52 seconds I'll never get back of my life. But understand that in this TikTok video, she uses an introduction with a thesis. She has transition words. She literally cites sources. So she's doing everything that she claims is an example of white supremacy culture. Really what this is, her position is the condescending and racist one. She is basically saying, and she's talking specifically about black and Latino kids, she's saying they are not smart enough to use proper grammar. She's saying that they can't cite rules. And I thought that that would be considered racist. She's saying the kids are too dumb to do what white students can do. I flatly reject that. Most sound and reasonable people reject that. You just wrote a book. Can you tell me what that book would be like if you had no grammar or introduction or citing any sources? What would it be at that point?
Well, fortunately, America still says you can print and say faith still moves mountains. But according to her, I guess I'd have to just, call it something else and do something completely different. By the way, you are absolutely right when you say that, yeah, she's putting everybody down. People of color of saying that, oh, they must be too stupid to learn this way. So what does she want to do? Teach in a different language? I pray she moves on. Don't go near a child. Jason Rantz. I'm having a rant about this. It's good to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you.